Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now, here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include Joe Polish, Roland Frazier, and Mitch Thrower. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 26 years. So if you're a company that has software, a product, or a design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you can email my team at welcome@goldsteinpc.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have with me here today Joe De Sena. Joe is the founder of Spartan Race, which is the preeminent endurance and obstacle race around the world. Over 1.5 million people participate in Spartan Races annually in more than 325 events held in more than 45 countries. He is a New York Times bestselling author of the book Spartan Up, Spartan Fit, and Spartan Way. He's also host of the Spartan Up podcast. I'm very pleased to welcome here today Joe De Sena. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me. When I heard you say that, it sounds like there's a lot of Spartans in everything we do here. Spartan Up, Spartan Way, Spartan Fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of Spartan in there for sure. And, I've had some great conversations with you and you've got so many great stories to tell. So I guess we just maybe touch on a piece of your origin story. And I hear it in the Spartan Up. It sounds just so like New York City, like, hey, Joe, Spartan up, okay? Like Spartan up, like smarten up.
Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it. So, I know, we talked about your pool cleaning business that you started in Queens as a teenager. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that. Just give a sense of kind of where you, how you got started on your business journey.
My mom I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. If you saw Goodfellas, I grew up dead center of Goodfellas. The Barrios lived right across the street. It was, if you wanted to succeed, you had to play, that game. We were right next to Kennedy Airport. Everything that was portrayed in Goodfellas was accurate. And, I'm a young kid. All my friends and I don't really know much about what goes on. But we see the guys with the nice cars, the rolls of $100 bills, the suits, the respect. And so you instinctually, you want to be that. You're chasing to be that. Are you tough enough? Is a question you ask yourself. Anyway, my mom doesn't want to be that, finds yoga, meditation, health food in the 70s, which was pretty rare. Happened to randomly walk into a health food store. Probably the only one on the East Coast at that time. Incense was burning, very hippie-ish. And she meets a yogi. And the yogi just flew in from India. And he sits her down and talks to her about being vegan and teaching meditation and yoga and the whole thing. And my mom buys into it. Different way of life. So needless to say, my parents get divorced. But my mom is preaching this nonstop. I don't want any part of it. I want a nice car and a roll of $100 bills, and I want to be, respected. And so I want to be around my dad. My neighbor, my father's neighbor, after my mother moved, they got divorced, she moved to Ithaca, New York. My father's neighbor was the head of the Banana Organized Crime family. Anyway, you could kind of see with the amount of cars pulling up every day and the fact that, people were deferring to him as they arrived at his house all day, every day, that there was something there. I didn't really know what. I'm 10, 11 years old. And he says to me, hey, he sees what's going on in my family. Why don't you come over and clean the pool? Pay you $35 a week. So he obviously trusted me, trusted my family. And the game back then probably was to find hardworking kids, right, that are up-and-comers because you get your hooks into them. And he teaches me 3 lessons when I come over his house for the first time. If you're going to show up at 8 o'clock, you show up 15 minutes early. On time is late. He says, lesson number 2, if you're going to take care of the pool, you also clean the shed, clean the lawn furniture, clean the windows, even though I'm not paying you for that. And number 3, never ask for money. Money will come. And so those lessons have stayed with me my whole life. And they've helped me through business for 40 plus years. So anyway, I start cleaning the pool. He introduces me to another customer. Now, before you know it, I've got 700 customers. I've got every boss from every family, the people below them, you name it. And the business is humming, and I'm growing up. And my mom is trying to pull me into yoga and meditation. I'm trying to hang out with these guys, you know. Now we're not just cleaning pools, we're doing brickwork. I bought some heavy equipment. I've got backhoes and bobcats and trucks and cranes. And I ended up going to college, which was another strange, random story. I don't know how. It took me 4 tries to get into college. I ended up getting into Cornell University. Was able to pay for my own school because I had this business. First kid from my family to go to school, so I didn't really have a path to follow. I was trying to figure the whole thing out. And ultimately, it was my mom who got me in. My mom taught yoga to one of the professors and got me a meeting. And I had proven I could do the work, even though my SAT scores weren't good. But I was on the fence. I wanted to go run my business, but gee, could I get into an Ivy League school? And so I ended up getting in. But when I was graduating, I wanted to go back and run the business. I didn't want to go sell towels for some towel company somewhere or sit behind a desk. I liked working, especially around these guys. And maybe I could apply some of what I learned in college for this business that I had. So I'm about to graduate, and a friend of mine who's still a friend today, he's 82 years old, he said, I met him at Cornell. Very successful guy, managed $1 billion back then. And he said, what do you do when you graduate? I said, I'm going to go run my business. He said, you're an idiot. You got to go to Wall Street. And I didn't really know much about Wall Street. I knew the 87 crash had happened a few years earlier. I didn't think anybody would make money there anymore. I thought that was over. Whatever was going on there was over after the crash in my mind. And he guided me to get a job on Wall Street, sell my business in Queens. So there's a term, if you live in New York, if you're from New York, I crossed over the river into the city, which is
right, the bridge and tunnel crew, right?
Exactly. I crossed the moat, and I entered the castle of Manhattan.
Right.
And I was with the big boys and girls now. Ended up getting a job on Wall Street. Ended up learning the business pretty quickly, and decided to start my own firm. So I guess I'm the kind of guy, like, I don't investigate all the little details, because if you do, you would have never left Queens, you would have never went to Wall Street, and you certainly wouldn't have started your own firm. But I did it because I'm a believer in fire, ready, aim, right? Take the plunge, and then I'll figure it out. But now that I'm on the hook, I have no choice but to figure it out. So I figured it out, built a business, and ultimately sold it. And I bought a farm. I met my wife and I bought a farm in Vermont. And during those Wall Street years, they were pretty tense. It was tough work, and you could make and lose $100,000 in a few minutes if you screwed up a trade. And then it wasn't only that; it was the people I had working for us, the people I was around. They were all upset if they got a bonus that was $20,000 less than the person next to them, and we were all making more money than we deserved. And it wasn't like we were, doing brain surgery. And so I didn't really like being around that. And to escape that reality, I would go do these crazy races. Ironmans, ultra runs, eco challenges. The crazier the race, the more I was into it, because it would take me to a place where I just wanted water, food, and shelter. I was so broken out there, so tired, so thirsty, that you forget about any headaches you have. And I fell so in love with what I was doing that I said, man, what if I could turn this into a business? And so the early Spartan, the predecessor to Spartan, was formed in 2001, right before September 11th.
So, You mentioned before that you had lessons that you learned while you were cleaning pools that you've carried with you throughout your life. What about from Wall Street? Like, what did you learn on Wall Street that you think you brought into the later business ventures that you've been involved in, and the way that you created and built Spartan?
Well, the biggest thing I learned is just because it's a product or service that is sold in a grocery store, sold to you some way, doesn't mean it's okay to eat or drink or use. And what I mean by that is our system, I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm not saying, like, America's great and capitalism is great. Democracy is great. But when you're a public company and your compensation scheme is based on the stock price, which most CEOs and most management teams, their compensation is based on that, and you've got to make quarterly numbers, you might make unnatural decisions. You might buy if you're a food company, you might buy some ingredients that are less expensive but not as healthy.
Yep.
If you're a Stanley Tool, you might sell all the land you own, where you chop down trees and turn those trees into hammers and things like that, because you're going to have a better quarter and you're going to make more money as a management team. Go down the list of decisions that are made by management teams because every quarter they want to satisfy Wall Street and make sure their stock goes up. So a lot of short-term thinking, not necessarily long-term thinking. Many people listening or watching might not remember, but in the 70s, maybe even the early 80s, there used to be television ads that said, 7 out of 10 doctors recommend smoking Marlboro cigarettes over other brands, right? There were ads in the 50s and 60s that, would tell women that it was barbaric to breastfeed and women instead should be drinking powdered, or the children should be drinking powdered milk. And so that's all based on, doing better as a company. And I guess my thing is, again, it's the best system we got. I lived in China for a little while. I lived in Singapore. I've lived in Tokyo. It's the best system we got. But boy, if we could somehow teach folks to be a little more long-term again, I might sound like a crazy person. I apologize.
So it's to be more conscious, basically. It's like that. What's good for profits isn't necessarily going to be good for the customer, but there is a way in which a company can be conscious and do right and not do wrong by people and still make money.
I like that. I like that word. The last one I'm just furious about that we got to fix is the phone addiction. The kids are just addicted to phones, and I have the fix for it, but you got to get Samsung, Apple, and Google to play along. And it's a problem. And kids are more addicted to. This summer, I had a bunch of kids on the farm during COVID, and I put them through hell. I mean, it was like Navy SEALs boot camp, budge training. It was tough on the kids, and they didn't have their phones during the day. And one night, about 10 days in, imagine 10 days of 15, 16-hour days for these kids, okay? 10 days in, I decided to give them some ice cream at the end of the day. I don't know, it's against my religion, but I folded and I said, I'm going to take care of the kids. We're going to give them some ice cream. At the same time, we put their phones out on the table. What do you think the kids went for, the phones or the ice cream?
I don't know.
The phones.
Mm.
Phones are more addictive than sugar. We got a problem. Right?
Yeah.
Ice cream melted.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. And so the phones is this present generation, but you could say the older generation was their couch. And so you had this vision to get 100 million people off of their couch. And then you created Spartan Races. So in order to fulfill this vision, what made you decide to build Spartan and Spartan Racing rather than something else?
Well, I became over 42 years. I've become pretty good at figuring out how to make money. I've built and sold some businesses, and some point, you chase a purpose in life. I like your word, conscious, right? I gotta be able to sleep at night. I gotta feel good about what I do. And I feel really good about ripping people off the couch and getting them doing really hard shit and transforming in the process. Now, if this was 200 years ago and the streets were filled with horses and life was really hard, I'd say, hey, let's start selling some couches. Let's make it a little easier on folks. But that's not the case. Life is way too easy for most of us in the first world. And I'm just trying to give back a little bit. I'm trying to help people, lose a little weight, give up some alcohol, give up the junk food, get together with their husband, their wife. And it's working.
Mm. And though, like, in terms of getting people to be fit and getting people into action, why Spartan Races? Like, why was it that was the pathway to get people off of their couch, at least initially?
Well, I mean, I did it because I liked it. I liked the word. I liked the idea of the military-inspired obstacle races. Obstacles emulate life's obstacles, but I couldn't get it to work. But after doing it for year after year after year and continuing to market and rip people off, they could physically go convince people to come do the races, it started to work. And oh my God, we get to own that word Spartan and that logo. Like, it's amazing. You see it, you get inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so we can go to that then in terms of the IP. So, like, what role has IP played in the growth of Spartan Race and establishing that brand?
I don't think it would have worked with a different name. I mean, Tough Mudder pulled it off. They were much more sophisticated. They were a very enviable competitor. It was a tough competitor for us. The kids came out of Harvard, but the name is not Spartan. And so now when I travel around the world, I was in Virginia yesterday. Everywhere we go, like everybody knows Spartan. And I think that name really helped. I mean, again, I'm in 45 countries. We're in China. They know Spartan. They studied in school. Like, everybody knows it. So it has played probably the most important role in creating what we created.
So having that brand and establishing IP protection for it, so that it created that moat around your brand, keep other people from coming close, has made a big difference. Then,
problem is, it costs a fortune, as you know. It costs an absolute fortune to try and keep that brand protected. And 45 countries, 50 countries. It's expensive. Yeah.
You guys have a lot of trademarks too.
It's a very expensive proposition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So then now, just by way of comparison, so you did a lot of endurance racing, endurance sports. I often think about business as being a kind of endurance sport. What do you think about that comparison in terms of, like, how is business, how in your view is business kind of like your endurance sports experience?
Well, everything that can go wrong does go wrong in business.
Certainly.
You got these great employees and then they leave. You've got competitors that pop up across the street. Your factory burns down in Indonesia because somebody leaves a light on. I mean, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. So my father used to say, you got to have the stomach for it. And, I'd almost prefer, if I had the choice, I'd prefer an endurance run. I'd prefer a 100-mile run over running a business. 100-mile run's easier. I tell my wife all the time, I'm sure the women are going to shriek when I say this, like, I'd rather give birth than run a business. Like, it's, at least you're designed to give birth. Like, running a business is just getting punched in the face all day, every day. And I'm not playing the world's, smallest violin. You got to have the stomach for it. You got to want to fight every day.
You got to be tough.
You got to be tough.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of being tough, so the pandemic came around and you were in the race business. It was like kind of like in the events business, essentially. So how did that shift your business, and what did you try out during the pandemic that worked and what didn't work?
It was a disaster. It shut us down in 45 countries. 325 events were shut down. It was lights out. Quickly furlough hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, which is awful. For anybody who's done it, they know what I'm talking about. It's cut expenses, not be able to pay bills. It was an absolute nightmare. It's like I was getting punched in the face running the business day to day before COVID. As soon as COVID hit, I get hit by a Mack truck. And so we said, look, we got to stay in touch with our customers. We got to get in touch with our customers. We got to do a bunch of content during this time, and we did that, and it seems to have worked.
So in terms of like the content, I mean, the original vision is get 100 million people off their couch. And I think when I had originally met you about 2 years ago, you were talking about this kind of creating more of the online experience for people and supporting them in their fitness journeys. So it sounds like through the pandemic, you've been able to focus towards something that you'd wanted to do for a while, really do more online focus and online support for people. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We wanted to be more digitally savvy. We never had the time for it. We're putting on events. We're too busy. We're putting out fires. And this gave us a little breather to dig out of a technology deficit.
Yeah. And so like the Spartan Plus membership, that's kind of like the people that are connected with you online, getting those resources.
Exactly. Trying to motivate them, get them fit, giving them some extra little whatever it takes to get somebody motivated.
Yep, absolutely. And I think you've acquired a couple of other events like that. You're kind of gearing up for as things begin to open up. You've created there's some new events that you've created like in other countries. I think there's one in Costa Rica, and then there's a combat related program. Do you want to tell me a bit about those?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we want to be the Louis Vuitton. If anybody knows LVMH, we want to be the Louis Vuitton of hard stuff, hard challenges. So if you're looking for something impossible to do, come to us. We bought a race called La Ruta down in Costa Rica. We bought a couple of other events, Patagonia Run down in Patagonia. We bought a bunch. We bought Tough Mudder right before the pandemic hit, our main competitor, and now we're launching combat, which is wrestling, jiu-jitsu, a whole because Sparta, Greece, was the original, place where combat was first created as an Olympic sport.
Yeah. Absolutely. So then, like in terms of like the things that you shifted that worked, I mean, what part of it, what part of what you shifted towards is going to stick with you through? And I guess part of that, it seems pretty obvious that the content you've created, the online membership systems that you've created are going to stay part of your ecosystem as things open up. But what else? Like, what else did you did and you learned during the pandemic you think is going to stay with your business?
Well, we're going to be a lot more technology focused, right? We've already started to lean in resource there. We built a great team. We're going to continue to acquire all these really cool brands from around the world. We're going to continue to produce an enormous amount of content to engage with our consumers. And hopefully we're not going to continue to furlough people. Hopefully that part's going to reverse, and it's already looking like it's reversing. I mean, the numbers on COVID are down every single day, which is awesome. All the counties and cities around the U.S. are calling us and saying, hey, when are we going to get you back? Even in places like California, which is, again, great because you're seeing one thing on the news, but behind the scenes, we're seeing lots of folks all over the country begging us to come back. So it's good.
Yeah, awesome. So if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how do they go about doing so? Yeah,
just go to at Real Joe De Sena on Instagram. You could always shoot me an email, joe@spartan.com. Make it short, 2 or 3 sentences only. I get a lot of emails every day. And check out our books, like you said earlier. Check out our podcast. But you should come to Sparta, Greece, where we have our World Championship in November. Love to see you in Sparta, Greece. I mean, who gets to go to Sparta and run through the historic site and experience what it felt like back then?
Yep, absolutely. And then I guess it's come back victorious or come back on your shield, right?
Come back with it or on it.
Right. Awesome. Joe, so great to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.